lots of people on social media, for example, sharing stories and experiences. Well, Gemma Grace in Ipswich is a regular voice on BBC Radio Suffolk with her YouTube videos and her poetry.
The struggles in autism are real. The struggles in autism are real. Real when you don't know how to feel. Feelings are all blurred into one sudden feeling of overwhelm. Overwhelmed and feeling trapped and buried underneath it all, struggling to escape. Escape from the everyday stereotypes. Stereotypes when people think they know best about you and your future. Future they don't see, it's about us and not them. Them, the struggle of noise and touch. Touch feeling like an electric shock going through my body. Body being on edge constantly when senses are heightened with tastes that we like, tastes that are sour and make us sick. The struggles in autism are real, but many I hide because I mask so that I can appear as normal. Normal, you don't understand the constant struggle by the expectation you put on me to be like you without any struggle. Struggles of being in social situations such as forced eye contact that's always expected. Expectations in autism do not work well as I get too much information. The struggles in autism are real. Because I cope doesn't mean that they are not there.
Hello.
Hi Gemma, it's John here.
Hi John.
The last line of the poem is, because I cope doesn't mean they're not there, talking about the struggles, which I think is quite an important point. And I guess that puts people in a hard situation, because if they manage their problems and can kind of keep them private to a certain extent, then I don't know, are people less understanding? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that line that I wrote was to basically explain how I feel people kind of lack understanding towards people with autism, because they assume because I'm so functioning and I can put on such a persona I can cope, that I don't either have it or I'm not struggling, whereas I'm very good at masking a lot of the time. So again, it comes down to the public perception, how they see females on the spectrum, and unfortunately some people like me are very, very good at masking, coping to such a high degree that they don't think the struggles are actually there, when in fact inside I'm crying. I want to get away from everything, everybody, because it's just too much to cope with.
Or that coping takes effort, so you are using up your own mental and physical resources in avoiding those problems and, like you say, masking. So that then has an impact on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, masking is draining, not just emotionally but physically, because it's the feeling tired, feeling absolutely exhausted all the time, to such a point where my sleep is not great most of the time. And people don't see it. They think, oh, well, Gemma's fine, she may need a little bit of a breather, or she may need a bit of a break sometimes. But people just think, oh, Gemma functions because she's social, she doesn't struggle. And the problem is with that, when I get to my point of meltdown or to the point of my anxiety, just leave me alone, let me go and calm down. I just need time to process things, because if it gets too much information, it's just people don't see that what they're saying to me day in, day out sometimes gets to a point where I just need to go away, because it's just simply too much to take in.
I've noticed a slight change in language. So instead of being Autism Awareness Month, it's now called Autism Acceptance Month. And I think that's quite significant.
Yes, Autism Acceptance Month, I think, is a better way of putting it out there to the public, because it's about accepting us regardless of our label or diagnosis. I think for now we should be in that time where we should accept people, and the problem is autism is still seen as the condition that's bad, or they think that you're damaged because of media stereotypes and things that you read online. So I'm hoping that Autism Acceptance Month rather than Autism Awareness Month, because Autism Awareness Month makes us sound broken, whereas acceptance, it's like, hey, we're the same as you. Yes, we function differently and we say different things or we cope differently, but we are just the same as you. We should have a unique spin on the world, and that shouldn't be something to look down upon.
I guess because it's the acceptance month, maybe people are sharing more stories on social media, or maybe I'm looking for them or noticing them more. But I've seen several conversations, and there seems to be a tension between people who have a medical diagnosis and people who haven't but consider themselves to be on the spectrum, and who is, for want of a better phrase, kind of properly autistic, and who has the right to talk about it if they don't have a medical diagnosis. So that's the kind of criticism of one group from another, and then on and on. Now I know social media is a little whirlpool of people looking to disagree, but as more people talk, and the idea that actually you might get diagnosed in your 20s or 30s or even later, and the impact that has on you and your family, a late diagnosis, that's actually quite important that people think about that or consider that, and think that might be a benefit to them to actually have a formal diagnosis, even if they've had a successful life and work and live on their own or what have you. I don't know, what's the benefit to you of having an official diagnosis?
I think, the benefit of me having a official diagnosis for me has helped me to understand where I fit in, and it's helped me to successfully, I guess, communicate better than I was doing before, because it got to a point where I was very socially awkward, inappropriate a lot of the time. I was struggling to make friends, I was struggling to be around groups of people, and I didn't understand why I was getting told off a lot of the time, or why people would be like, oh, Gemma, that's slightly inappropriate, you shouldn't have said that. And it's difficult because people look one way at you and think, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just different, that's the way it is. But unfortunately, having a diagnosis helps people to go, actually, oh, this is why Gemma's different. Like, she communicates differently, she has sensory issues to noise, to touch, to food. So they kind of understand me a lot better, whereas before people would assume I'm being picky or spoiled brat, because people are, oh, just deal with it, Gemma, just communicate better and help people. And I didn't understand why I had to be expected like that. I didn't understand what the appropriate socials were, whereas now I've learned to practice, mimic, I guess is the right word, to fit in properly and to know people's social boundaries, whereas before I didn't know that. I was very inappropriate. I would ring people early hours in the morning. I would text people early hours in the morning if I was in distress, and I didn't realise that wasn't suitable. And it's kind of taught me life lessons since being diagnosed. What is the appropriate way to talk to somebody?
And I guess it helps both you, but it also helps maybe your family. It gives, I don't know. The title is celebrating difference of the month, and there are differences, and if you want to be successful at work, there are rules and norms and things to follow, and I don't know, having a diagnosis enables people to assist you in doing that maybe a bit better, a bit more easily.
Yeah, my family absolutely brilliant since I've received my diagnosis, especially my dad. He's learned to better communicate with how I see the world, and whereas before we were quite snappy with each other, whereas now we take turns to talk to each other. He understands that if I'm having a bad day or I'm to a point where I'm overloaded, I'm like, just stop, let me breathe, let me have some time out, I can come back to you after I cool down a little bit, because he realises now that there's too much information being put to me, and then I get over there, I'm like, just, whoa, too much, I can't do this, I just need to have time to myself. So both my dad and my mum have learned to better communicate with me, and they're not so always trying to call me or message me all the time, because it got to a point where I was just getting too much and I wouldn't reply to people. Then it raised concern because people thought there was something wrong with me. Whereas now if they don't hear from me for a couple of 3 days, they're, oh, Gemma's doing her thing, she's fine, she'll reach out, she needs us. Whereas before, it was a constant war of text messaging, phone calls. Oh, what's wrong with Gemma? Why doesn't she reply? What's her behaviour so awkward? there is now people that with me with regards to that.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And your next video you're going to film with your dad. Will that be all right? What are you going to get him to talk about?
Get him to talk about what it's like to be a carer for somebody with autism, because again, this is an area that doesn't really get discussed much, because carers are the ones that are just the quiet people who do things behind the scenes. And I think for people like my dad, it's important for him to have his voice and as an advocate for me, who supports me out in the community. If we go out, for example, recently when we were going out to the store to get my eyes tested, and he rang them up in advance, explained that I couldn't wear the mask because of sensory issues through my autism, and the fact it really disturbs me to wear one. And they actually really sympathised with my dad and were like, okay, we understand she maybe finds things difficult, and he explains about my communication or lack of it a lot of the time, that he was able to tell them that she may not retaliate to what you're saying straight away. She may be quiet. She may have to think about what you're saying to her to cooperate. And he made sure that they understood that an eye test can be really stressful for me. So without him being there, I really would have struggled.
Well, it'll be an interesting video. I look forward to watching it. That's all on your YouTube channel, and more things coming up as part of Autism Acceptance Month. Gemma, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, John.